I remember the cold before I remember their eyes. The wind cut like glass, each gust finding its way through the seams of my suit, biting into my skin until my bones ached. The air here on Kareth Prime was thin, with a faint taste of metal, and every breath felt like I was dragging ice into my lungs. My boots crunched over jagged frost that had built up over centuries, the ridges rising like the spines of some long-dead beast beneath my feet. The horizon was nothing but white and pale blue, the sky smeared with thin clouds that looked more like scars than weather. I kept moving because stopping meant freezing, and freezing meant dying. My survival pack was already lighter than I liked, 1 heat cell, 2 ration bars, and a half-empty water filter. No backup beacon, no spare gloves. Just the stubborn drive to make it to the outpost before nightfall. That's when I saw movement. At first, I thought it was the wind sculpting shadows across the ridge ahead, the way light can play tricks when you're exhausted. But the shapes didn't vanish. They stepped into the weak sunlight, each one heavy and deliberate. 6 of them. They were massive, their shoulders as high as my chest, thick fur rippling over corded muscle. Their paws sank into the snow without a sound. The eyes, pale, glacial blue, locked on me, unblinking, unafraid. Their breath came in white bursts, steam curling around long, curved fangs. I didn't move. My heartbeat thudded loud enough I was sure they could hear it. They didn't charge. They didn't growl. They just stood there. Then I saw it, ribs pressing against their hides, legs trembling. The smallest one collapsed into the snow and didn't rise. Predators, yes. But starving ones. I should have turned away. Every survival manual, every colonial safety lecture, every grim story told by miners at the bar said the same thing: never feed wild predators. It teaches them that humans carry food, and sooner or later, you become part of the menu. That logic was clear, sensible, and drilled into me since training. But logic doesn't always win when you're staring at something that's dying right in front of you. The wind howled through the ridge, carrying with it the sound of the smallest predator's shallow, ragged breathing. The alpha, the largest of them, stepped forward a single pace, his head low, shoulders rolling like a predator ready to spring. His eyes never left mine. I kept my hands slow, deliberate, as I unclipped my survival pack and dug out the last 2 ration bars. I tore one open, the faint synthetic scent instantly lost in the icy air. With a flick of my wrist, I tossed it into the snow between us. The alpha froze, nostrils flaring, then padded forward, each movement controlled, as if he were measuring my intent. He lowered his massive head and took the food, chewing slowly. His gaze never wavered. The smallest predator whimpered, a sound that cut through the wind. I broke the second bar in half. My gloves were stiff with cold, but I slid one half across the snow toward the young one. The alpha's eyes flicked to it, but he didn't stop me. The cub-like creature sniffed, then devoured it greedily, its whole body trembling with the effort. For a long moment, nothing else moved. Then the alpha stepped back, and the rest of the pack mirrored him. No growls, no lunges, just silence. That was the moment I knew something had shifted between us. I thought they'd vanish after that, melt back into the endless white, leaving me alone with the wind and my dwindling supplies. But when I broke camp the next morning, I saw their tracks in the snow, a loose crescent around the wreck of the cargo hauler where I'd spent the night. They hadn't come closer than 20 meters, but they hadn't gone far either. I kept my eyes forward, trudging toward the jagged horizon. It wasn't until I stopped to catch my breath an hour later that I noticed them. 6 shapes, half hidden in the blowing snow, pacing me at a distance. Their movements were deliberate, almost coordinated. When I slowed, they slowed. When I turned to scan the terrain, they froze. By the second night, I knew it wasn't coincidence. I built a small fire in the hollow of a wind-scoured ridge, and while the flames licked at the darkness, I caught glimpses of eyes gleaming in the shadows. They didn't approach, didn't growl. They just watched. Something about it felt wrong for predators. They weren't stalking me like prey. They were guarding me. On the 3rd day, I crossed a frozen ravine. The ice groaned under my weight, and I heard movement above, the pack, pacing along the ridge, keeping parallel to my path. When the wind shifted, I caught their scent, faintly metallic, like blood cooled on snow. I realized then they weren't following me because they were hunting. They were following because I was moving through their territory, and they had decided, for reasons I couldn't guess, to keep me alive in it. It was an uneasy truce, but one I didn't dare break. Out here, in this frozen wasteland, maybe I needed them as much as they needed me. It happened in the pass, a narrow cut between 2 walls of ice where the wind screamed like a living thing. I'd been moving carefully, testing each step, knowing that avalanches and hidden crevasses were as deadly as anything with teeth. The pack was above me on the ridges, their silhouettes darting in and out of the blowing snow. The first sound was faint, a low, almost metallic clicking beneath the wind. I slowed, scanning the ice. Then came the screech, high and sharp, slicing through the air. The ground erupted in front of me as a razor beast burst from beneath the snow, a nightmare of black chitin and glistening limbs. Its eyes were lidless, its maw lined with jagged pincers, and its legs ended in hooked claws capable of slicing through armor. I barely had time to raise my rifle before the alpha dropped from the ridge like a thunderbolt. He slammed into the creature's side, teeth sinking into the plates between its legs. The rest of the pack poured down the slope, hitting the razor beast from every angle. The fight was chaos. Snow churned into a blinding storm as claws raked, jaws snapped, and the air filled with the sound of tearing chitin. The beast thrashed, throwing one predator aside with a sickening crack, but they came back again and again, coordinated and relentless. I stood frozen, weapon ready but useless. The battle moved too fast, too brutal for me to risk a shot. In less than a minute, it was over. The razor beast collapsed, steaming in the cold, its black shell cracked open. One of the pack, the scarred alpha, tore off a chunk of meat and dropped it at my feet. I didn't move. It wasn't a threat. It was an offering. When the jagged outlines of the mining colony finally appeared on the horizon, I felt a wave of relief, short-lived, as it turned out. The walls rose high above the snow, plated in dull metal, dotted with guard towers and sensor arrays. I quickened my pace, the crunch of my boots echoed by the soft, padded steps of the pack trailing behind me. The moment the guards on the wall spotted us, the reaction was immediate. Sirens wailed, sharp and urgent. Lights swept across the ice, fixing on me and the predators at my back. I raised an arm to wave, but the gates didn't open. Instead, heavy shutters slammed down over the firing ports, then slid open again to reveal the black mouths of rifles and plasma cannons. "Step away from the beasts!" a voice boomed over the loudspeaker, the words cutting through the wind. "They're with me!" I shouted back, my voice raw from the cold. I took a step forward, but the alpha matched it, moving with me, a looming shadow at my side. That only seemed to make things worse. I could see the guards shifting nervously, their weapons tracking the predators instead of me. I knew what they saw, 6 apex hunters, all muscle and teeth, standing calmly at my back like I tamed them. To them, it wasn't a sign of trust, it was a sign of danger. I tried again, shouting over the storm, explaining how they'd saved my life, how we'd fought together, but my words were swallowed by the wind and the alarm. The tension on the wall was a living thing now, taut and ready to snap. To the colony, they were monsters. But I had walked beside them for days. I knew better. They weren't my enemies. They were my pack. The corporate security team didn't waste time with more warnings. One moment the wind was howling over the ice, the next it was drowned out by the sharp crack of plasma fire. The first bolt hit the alpha, burning into his side with a hiss of vaporized fur and flesh. He didn't yelp, didn't fall, he just staggered, eyes blazing, and lunged toward the source of the attack. Snow exploded all around us as the pack scattered and reformed, moving like shadows in a storm. I dropped to one knee, rifle braced, and fired at the muzzle flashes along the wall. The guards were disciplined, their shots tight and controlled, but they weren't ready for the predators. The pack flanked left and right, weaving through the drifts, vanishing into blind spots before reappearing in a blur of muscle and teeth. I fought like I'd never fought before, not for my own survival, but for theirs. My shots punched through armor plates and sent one guard tumbling from the wall. The predators struck with lethal precision, dragging men into the snow and ending them before they could scream. The air stank of burnt ozone and blood. A second blast hit the smallest predator, spinning him into the snow. I broke cover and ran, scooping him into my arms without thinking. His chest rose and fell, shallow but steady. When I turned back, the alpha was locked in a brutal struggle with a guard who'd made it down from the wall, his claws carving through armor like it was cloth. By the time the last shot faded, the wall was silent. The security team lay broken on the ice, weapons cooling in the snow. The alpha collapsed beside me, blood steaming in the cold. For a moment, I thought it was over, until he opened his eyes and licked my hand. We never went into the colony. There was no need anymore. Whatever life I'd thought I was returning to on Kareth Prime had ended the moment the gate stayed shut and the guns opened fire. The pack had healed in the wild, and so had I, though the scars we carried weren't all on the surface. Days turned into weeks. I learned their ways, the subtle shifts of body language that meant caution, The flick of an ear that meant danger, the low rumble in the throat that signaled it was time to move. We hunted together, moving silent across the tundra, bringing down snow elk and ice hares. They taught me where the winds carved hidden caves into the cliffs, warm enough to sleep without fear of freezing. I learned to share food the way they did, not by throwing scraps, but by placing them within reach and waiting for acceptance. Nights were different now. I no longer huddled alone against the cold. Instead, I slept in the warmth of their fur, the steady heartbeat of the alpha behind me, the soft breathing of the others forming a wall against the wind. Under the aurora-lit sky, the storms felt smaller, the darkness less threatening. Out here, there were no colonies, no corporate security teams, no politics. Only survival, and the unspoken bond between those who'd bled for one another. I was human, and they were predators, but somewhere in the space between, we'd become something else entirely. When we moved across the ridges now, I didn't feel like a trespasser in their territory. I felt like I belonged. On Kareth Prime, no one hunted us anymore. And if they ever tried, they'd learn what I had already seen: a human and a predator pack are deadlier together than alone.